To call the Wetlands Board meeting to order for September 13th, 2023. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as not to prevent their despoliation. I'd like to first open the public comment period. The public comment period provides an opportunity for community members to share opinions on topics not directly related to the specific public hearing items that remain relevant to the responsibility of the board. All speakers must state their name and address for the record if you're going to speak. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the board? All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Can we get a roll call, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Roadley? Here. Mr. Waltrip?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. May?
Here.
Ms. Bowie? Ms. Bowie is absent.
All right, thank you, sir. First, has the board had a chance to review the minutes from the August 9th regular board meeting? Any comments or changes to those minutes? Yes, sir. All right. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Minutes approved. Also, we have a second set of minutes from the August 22nd special board meeting. Any comments or suggestions regarding those minutes? Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we'll move on to public hearings. The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation, followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion among the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. Tonight's first public hearing is Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, James City County Watershed Planner, here to present WJPA-23-0024. Mr. Jordan Clifford of Riverworks, Inc. has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Mark Notley for the installation of a revetment on property located at 223 Sherwood Forest within the Skimino Creek watershed. This parcel can be seen here above on the vicinity map, outlined here in blue. And an aerial photograph of this property, again, up on the screen. The area in question is this area that abuts the shoreline adjacent to an existing marsh. Some topography as it affects this site, and the floodplain as it affects this site. The applicant is proposing to install a revetment along a shoreline scarp landward of that existing marsh and toe sill that exists in this channel. The existing shoreline is sloughing back towards a deck corner and threatening the integrity of the home that exists on the property. It is for this reason the applicant is proposing to line approximately 200 linear feet, 1,760 square feet of the existing shoreline with riprap. Because of the proximity of the deck to the existing marsh, there are approximately 30 square feet of vegetated wetland loss anticipated with the proposed revetment. On the screen above, you can see a site plan. So the existing sill that's currently in place is indicated here. The house and pool structure on the land with the dock that runs between the area of the bank, the wetland grass that exists between the marsh toe sill and the bank, and that marsh toe sill that was discussed earlier. The proposed revetment is located here in yellow with that portion of this project. Sorry, the revetment and its portion of the project which falls within this board's jurisdiction, the 1.5 times the tidal range, is outlined here in yellow. The remainder of the revetment extends along this shoreline on either side of this dock. Some site photographs. Again, this is the deck corner in question. You can see some stakes here in the field, with the stake furthest landward being the top of the revetment. And then as we go through these pictures, you will see a second set of stakes downhill of this scarp. That would be the bottom of the revetment. This is the marsh area of which was being pointed out earlier, and some tidal or vegetated wetlands along this bank as well. So looking back over towards that property corner, again, this is that scarp. It is approximately 6 inches to a foot in height. This is the other side of that pier. So looking at the other side of the property. And looking at the general region of which wetland loss would be occurring and the portion that falls within this board's jurisdiction. And just a general photograph of the existing marsh area from the pier. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised Wetland Mitigation Compensation Policy and Supplemental Guidelines, Regulation 4 VAC 20-390-10, Virginia as a Chesapeake Bay program partner is committed to achieve a no net loss of existing wetlands acreage and function in the signatory's regulatory program. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following 3 criteria must be met. That all reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal. The proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature, and the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. Should it satisfy all 3 criteria, however, compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that this project meets the 3 criteria outlined above. Because of this wetland loss of which is proposed, the applicant has agreed to pay into a wetland crediting system in the amount of 30 credits. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval for the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary local, state, and federal permits. All development activities located in the special flood area shall comply with floodplain area regulations of the James City County Zoning Ordinance. If the applicant cannot mitigate on site, they must provide a receipt for the purchase of 30 square feet of tidal wetland credits. The wetlands permit for this project shall expire on September 13th, 2026, if construction has not begun. And if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request shall be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I'd like to open up the public comment period. Anyone, does the applicant or anyone from the public want to speak on this matter? Seeing none. Oh, there is one. Please state your name and address for the record.
Gordon Clifford, I'm the applicant for Riverworks Incorporated. Address is 5140 Old Rosewell Lane, Gloucester, Virginia. So I just wanted to come up here in case there were any questions. Know that with the site plan is a little difficult to see. I'm tried to hand draw it as best I could, but anyway, like I said, I'd like to be able to answer any questions you gentlemen may have.
Chairman, I did visit the site with staff, and fairly straightforward.
Thank you.
Just a question. That sill out there is not stopping the wave energy?
It's a very, very low profile one. At high tide, a lot of times it's just at or sometimes just below, somewhere right in the neighborhood of that. I almost would go so far as to say it's somewhat closer to a marsh tow revetment more than sill. I don't know when it was constructed, but the what we were trying to do is basically accomplish the stopping the erosion that he has that's right in front of his house. The times that he deals with that most of the time is generally if kind of outside nor'easter times. I think he bought the house 3 or 4 years ago, and there was at one point there was a little bit of storm surge that was up there, and he had some wave energy that was beating against the bank. So what he's kind of looking for is a combination of both stopping that erosion. I think there may be a view from the side where you guys can see that I propose putting the riprap as opposed to just bringing it kind of after I bring the bank to an acceptable grade. I propose putting a little bit of kind of a ridge there for future, Hurricane Isabel type stuff to break down any of the wave energy. So that's also why I believe it should show that it's class 2 as a armor, and I'll use class 1 or class A1 underneath it. But that was what the proposal was for the slightly larger stone as well. So anyway.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir, for your comments.
Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public like to speak on this matter? All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board. Yeah, comments from board members? or
Chairman, again,
discussion?
I think the project's fairly straightforward. There is a need for some protection along the shoreline. There's evidence of erosion, so I have no issues with the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Roadley. Do we have a motion on the floor?
I will move to accept move to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board case WJPA 23-0024.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt the resolution. Mr. Wilson?
Motion to adopt. Mr. Roadley,
Yes?
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, just as a procedural note, based on our special session, you might note in the proceedings that we're keeping the public comment period open past our discussion in case this public would like to re-engage on that,
All right.
just as a procedural note.
Thank you. All right, the next matter in front of the board is 206 The Main. Ms. Benedict?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting WJPA-23-0010. Mr. Randolph Carnell with Living Shorelines LLC has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. James Ducker for the replacement of a bulkhead on property located at 206 The Main within the James River watershed. The property can be seen outlined here in blue, and the watershed outlined in yellow. Here is aerial photography of the property. There is an existing timber bulkhead along the shoreline that is failing in multiple places. Here's the topography at that site, the floodplain as it affects this property. As I said, there is the failing bulkhead along the shoreline. The applicant is proposing to replace this existing 300 linear foot bulkhead with a vinyl bulkhead. The new bulkhead will be installed in place of the existing structure along the peninsula and directly in front of the existing structure where severe erosion has not yet occurred. The applicant has stated that a living shoreline is not appropriate for this property due to the significant grading that would be required and the loss of vegetation landward of the shoreline. You can see mean low and mean high water Therefore, the board's jurisdiction is this area of the bulkhead shown in yellow, and the area of wetland impact, I think, got shifted a little bit, but should be kind of in line with the board's jurisdiction. But they're due to the bulkhead failing, vegetated wetlands now exist landward of the existing bulkhead, hence why there are vegetated wetland impacts. By performing the bulkhead replacement, approximately 30 square feet of vegetated wetland impacts are anticipated with this project. Additionally, here is a cross-section of the proposed project. Site photography showing the portion within the board's jurisdiction here by the existing boat ramp. The issues with the existing bulkhead and the vegetated impacts or vegetated wetlands incurring as a result of the failure. And just more pictures of the issues happening on this site currently. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised wetland mitigation compensation policy and supplemental guidelines, Virginia, as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to achieve a no net loss of existing wetland acreage and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following 3 criteria must be met. All reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated into the proposal. The proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature, and the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. Should it satisfy all 3 criteria, however, compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that this project meets the 3 criteria outlined above. Because there are proposed vegetated wetland impacts associated with the bulkhead replacement, the applicant would be required to purchase wetland credits from an approved bank. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the specified flood hazard area shall comply with floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinance and receive all required approvals and permits prior to commencement of such activities. The applicant must submit a land disturbing permit if the fill landward of the proposed bulkhead should exceed 2,500 square feet. If the applicant is not able to mitigate on site, the applicant must provide a receipt for the purchase of 30 square feet of tidal wetland credits from an approved wetlands mitigation bank. The wetlands permit for this project shall expire on September 13th, 2026 if construction has not begun, and if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd, 2026, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Any questions for Ms. Benedict?
The existing piles that are on the outside of that ramp that are busted off and broke off, and are they going to remain like that? Or it looks like to me they just keep eroding and breaking off, and it's a hazard even coming in there. Is that going to be repaired? It's not into this project here.
No, that's not a part of this project as proposed.
Any other questions?
So the bulkhead's gonna go around the entire perimeter of that blue line up there?
Correct.
The only portion that is within our jurisdiction is that limited area.
Yes, back on the site plan, it's the area in yellow above. That is within the board's jurisdiction.
Including the vegetated wetlands behind.
Yes, sir.
So I presume that the rest of the bulkhead is channelward of mean low water? Is that correct?
Correct.
What is the restriction on that channel as far as replacing and fixing that? Would come between our board or not, if that was to be repaired?
No, because it's not between mean low, 1.5 times mean low and mean high water. It's not within the jurisdiction of this board.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Does anyone from the public or does the applicant wish to speak on this matter? Please state your name and address for the record.
Randy Carnell, 513 Dandy Loop Road in Yorktown. Hey, good evening. I don't have anything else to say. She did a great job summarizing the project. It's pretty straightforward, other than the fact that over time, this area of concern in the green up there has become part of your jurisdiction. There's a salt bush there, and I agree it's about 30 square feet. And the property owner has agreed to certainly pay the mitigation because of the impacts. On the northern side of that boat ramp, we would like to attempt to mitigate on site if possible. But from my understanding from Trevor, the state came out and said they do not recommend trying to move that salt bush over there because it most likely won't survive. So we're gonna move forward with the mitigation. And if y'all have any other questions, that's really why I came up here.
Much.
Any questions? All right, thank you so much for your comments. All right, seeing no other individuals wishing to speak, I'd like to close that a public comment period, and it is up before the board. Any questions, comments, discussions from the board? Seeing none, do we have a motion on the floor?
Motion to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board Case WJPA 23-0010.
Hey, Mr. Wilson, we have a motion to adopt the resolution. Can you get a roll call, please?
Motion to adopt, Mr. Roadley,
Yes?
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. There are no board considerations or matters of special privilege. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? All right, I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
We will call to order the September 13, 2023 meeting of the Chesapeake Bay Board. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetlands, streams, and lakes in James City County, which are tributaries to the Chesapeake Bay. There is a public comment period, as Mr. May expressed earlier. The public comment period provides an opportunity for the community members to share opinions on topics not directly related to specific public hearing items, any that remain relevant to the responsibility of the board. Any speakers may state their name and address for the record. So all speakers, excuse me. Does anybody have any public comment at this time not related to matters before the board? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment And Mr. Wilson, a roll call, please.
Mr. Roadley,
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. May,
Here.
Ms. Bowie. Ms. Bowie is absent.
We have meeting minutes from the August 9th regular board meeting. Are there any changes or additions?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from August 9th.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. We have a second set of minutes from the August 22nd special board meeting. Any comments or additions?
Sure.
Motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from August 22nd as presented.
Motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter is approved. Public hearings tonight. The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so, the discussion among the board has concluded. The public hearing will be closed. The first item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0089 at 3096 North Riverside Drive. Ms. Benedict.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0089. Mr. Sean Thompson with Total Home Improvements has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. Jeffrey Stephen for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a deck located at 3096 North Riverside Drive within the Chickahominy Haven subdivision and the Yarmouth Creek watershed. Above, you can see the parcel outlined in blue here. This parcel was platted in 1959 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here you can see aerial photography of the property, the topography of the property, which is fairly flat, the floodplain as it affects this property, and the resource protection area. The total lot size of this property is 0.32 acres, of which 31% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 156 square foot deck adjacent to the rear of the home. Existing conditions on this property include a 126 square foot concrete patio in the area of the proposed deck. So the existing patio is shown here in red, and then the proposed deck would extend on either side of the existing patio, and those areas are shown here in yellow. You'll see the 100-foot RPA and the 50-foot RPA shown in red, as well as the floodplain shown here in blue. Total new impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 30 square feet within the landward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 2 shrubs. Here's site photography. There was an existing deck on this property, but as the homeowners have been doing improvements to the home, they went ahead and removed that deck. The concrete patio, though, can be seen here. That is still existing. And again, you'll get a good outline of the patio. The applicants are just proposing to build the new deck, and that would extend to the ends of the home. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a deck. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a deck is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicant must submit a mitigation plan equating to 2 shrubs to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to project start. The applicant must submit a surety of $250 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by September 13th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions for staff?
That previous deck just over the concrete pad?
Yes.
So being that it was a existing one there, that they are pretty much can put that deck back. We're looking at the accessories on, basically.
Yes, if they were putting the deck back over top of just the existing concrete patio, then they would not have to come before the board. But since they're expanding on either side, the case has to be heard tonight.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak on this matter before the board? Hearing none. Board, the matter is open for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a reasonable sized deck replacing what was there before. It's just 30 square foot of landward RPA impact. There's existing impervious cover already there. I would be in support of this application.
Anyone else? Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the audience? If not, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant exception request Chesapeake Bay case number CBPA 23-0089 at 3096.
Mr. Wilson.
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0087 at 105 Ambrose Hill. Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, Watershed Planner, here to present CBPA-23-0087. Before I get started on this, I did just want to remind the board, as there are only 4 members present, that 3 affirmative votes are needed to pass an exception request. With that being said, Mr. Joseph Krolinger of the Structures Group, Inc. has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. Lee Scott and Miss Jeannie Tranium for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of 2 retaining walls on property located at 105 Ambrose Hill within the Kings Mill subdivision and the College Creek watershed. This parcel can be seen here in blue. Again, this is within the Kings Mill subdivision and the College Creek watershed. The parcel was platted in 1981 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. So an aerial photograph on the screen above would show a closer view of this parcel. Existing conditions, the area where the house exists is a fairly gentle slope that ends up into a fairly steep ravine along the area of which the applicants are proposing the retaining walls. The water flowing from the northern portion of this property and then into this ravine. The RPA as it affects this property. And the existing conditions, there is an existing retaining wall on site, but it is beginning to fail. The total lot size of this property is 0.54 acres, of which 54% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to remove this existing timber wall and replace and expand it to a block retaining wall. Case number CBPA-22-0104 did appear before the board on September 14th, 2022 for the approval and the replacement of this retaining wall. The applicants revised and approved the approved plan to account for an additional retaining wall necessary to accommodate James City County retaining wall ordinances. This section, though it is light, would be indicated here in this corner. At that portion of the wall, the proposed and previously approved wall became too tall to meet the zoning and building ordinance of James City County. Given that this approved permit would expire tomorrow, the applicants wish to bring the entirety of the project, including the new retaining wall, to the board this evening. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 124 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals the plantings of 5 shrubs. So again, this retaining wall of which is proposed before the board is the yellow area that follows the general line of the original retaining wall with a second retaining wall behind this corner here. The proposed mitigation is outlined here in green. So while the requirements for this amount of impacts were to plant 5 shrubs, the applicant has submitted 6 shrubs as proposed mitigation. Some site photographs. This is the corner of the wall that the new retaining wall, the secondary one, will be installed at. As you can see, it's a timber wall that's going to be replaced with a more stable and permanent structure. Looking down this line, you can see degradation within this retaining wall. And looking back in that same area where the second retaining wall will be necessary. Again, further evidence of the degradation of which is occurring in the existing retaining wall. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of 2 retaining walls. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because construction of retaining walls is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception requests the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied by Chapter 23 to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony and with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into its approval. That all other necessary local, state, and federal permits are acquired as necessary. that the applicants must submit a mitigation plan equating to 5 shrubs to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to the project start. This condition has been fulfilled. The applicants must submit a surety of $500 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee these mitigation plantings. That this exception request approval will become null and void if construction is not begun by September 13th, 2024. And that written requests for an extension to this exception must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd, 2024, just 6 weeks prior to the expiration date of this permit. Thank you very much. If I have any answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions for staff?
One question, Mr. Chair. This existing retaining wall, it's been, from the photos, it looks like it's been effective throughout the years it's been in use so far, and there's no reason to believe that anything's going to change by replacing it.
I think I would largely agree. It seems to be doing its job. The timber nature of it is just beginning to fail as it degrades over time.
Thank you.
So that continuous retaining wall was approved before, so what was added was a little corner section?
Exactly. So the only portion of this project that is different than what was previously approved is the section right here, which is the secondary terracing effect down. As this exception, the previously approved exception request would expire tomorrow, the applicants chose to bring the entirety of the project back before the board.
So it's tearing down the very high retaining wall?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on this matter? Very good. The public hearing will remain open. Any further discussion from the board?
Sir?
And I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case CBPA 23-0087 at 105 Ambrose Hill.
Mr. Wilson.
Motion to adopt. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 23-0098 at 109 Brancaster. Ms. Benedict.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0098. Mr. Chase Grogg with Landtech Resources has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Ms. Hillary Brown and Mr. Darnell Lamont Coville for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling located at 109 Brancaster within the Fords Colony subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. You'll find the subject parcel outlined here in blue. This parcel was platted in 1981 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here is aerial photography of the property. It is completely wooded and does have wetlands on the back half of the property. Here is topography sloping back towards those wetlands. The resource protection area as it affects this lot. The total lot size is 0.55 acres, of which 95% is located within the RPA. And the floodplain as it affects this lot. Additionally, this is the water flow path from this property. It does discharge directly into the wetlands, indicated by these blue arrows here. The applicants are proposing to construct a single-family dwelling. Impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 1,783 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 1,623 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA, for a total of 3,406 square feet of impacts. So you'll find the 100-foot RPA and 50-foot RPA shown in red. The areas in yellow are the proposed impervious within the 100-foot landward RPA, Again, that is 1,783 square feet. And the area in orange are the seaward 50-foot impacts, and those are 1,623 square feet. Additionally, you'll see the wetlands line shown here in green, the floodplain shown in blue, and we do have a drainage and utility easement along the back property lines shown here in this purple color. The minimum first floor square footage required for this section of Ford's Colony is 1,500 square feet. This proposed residence has a first floor square footage equal to 1,580 square feet, which is a 6% increase. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 8.5 planting units. The applicants have provided a mitigation plan shown above, which satisfies this requirement. The mitigation area is being shown in green. Staff is also requesting that an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg, James City County Courthouse due to the environmental sensitivity of this lot. Here is site photography, standing at the road and looking back towards this property. Standing at the back of the house and looking up towards the road. Looking, here is another house corner flagged here in orange, showing the right side of the property and back towards the wetlands. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a single-family dwelling. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of the single-family dwelling extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for this project. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg, James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicants must submit a surety of $6,750 and a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. The exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by September 13th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions for staff?
Sir?
Could you put the site plan back up on the screen? Just confirming a couple things. I mean, in looking at the minimum necessary to afford relief comment, they clearly can't move the structure out of the RPA completely. Looks like they're touching the property lines, can't move it out of the seaward 50 feet with the currently proposed configuration. Were there any other mitigation measures proposed as part of the project?
Not at this time, no.
Very good, thank you.
And maybe the applicant can answer this one. There's a basement on the one corner?
Correct.
So it's a single story with a basement.
I will let the applicant clarify.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to open the public hearing. Would the applicant care to address the board?
Good evening, members of the board. Mr. Chairman, always a pleasure to see you. Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources, 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite E, Williamsburg, Virginia. Yes, this is another fun, tricky one that we spent a decent amount of time, as we always do with these, first trying to figure out the best placement of the home. The lot, basically, the contours run up and down the page, and so we looked at, putting the house slammed across this setback line. We thought about putting it more down this way and, trying to make a garage entrance, bring it as far forward as possible. This is basically the layout we ended up with. The house is a basement, one-story house with a basement. There's no stairs off the back, trying to, again, reduce some impervious by not having a long staircase, with it being a basement home. In response to you, Mr. Rodley, about other mitigation measures, we're technically slightly overplanted. Mitigation calls for 8.5. We're proposing 9 mitigation credits. The lot basically slopes from the beginning all the way to the back, so we don't have a lot of opportunity to be able to place some sort of infiltration, with at the toe of the slope right next to the wetlands, concerns with that water getting back into that. It's outside of your guys' jurisdiction, but just to kind of point it out, right now our clean out is clear back here, which is through the wetlands. Along this property line, you'll see there's a manhole here, a clean out, and a clean out. We are working with JCSA to see if there's a way that we could avoid those wetland impacts and shift that clean out coming over here. So I haven't gotten kind of final clarification of that. It looks positive at the moment, but again, I know that's outside of your guys' jurisdiction, but it would be nice to be able to leave those wetlands intact and be able to armor that with our mitigation right in front of it. Happy to answer any other questions you have. Ms. Brown, Mr. Coville, and their contractor, Brian Parsons, are also here as well.
Any questions?
The elevation of the wetlands water level to the bottom of the basement. How much lower is the basement than the water level for the wetlands?
Proposed basement is down at about 39, and the flood zone in that area is elevation 33. So we're significantly higher than the flood zone, as well as the wetlands. And the wetlands run right along about the 33-foot contour. So we're going to sit up, again.
You're going to have flooding into that.
Oh, we will be completely in flood zone X.
Any other questions for Mr. Grog? Well, thank you. We'll open it to other members of the audience. Would anybody else care to speak on this matter?
Yes, good evening. My name is Charles DeShane. I live at 106 Brancaster, and this is a really nice lot. Unfortunately, it's one of those lots in Ford's Colony that was probably never meant to be built on, but was used as a drainage area for all the overflow from the hill and the houses and the streets that are all above it. It is the lowest point on our street. It is the source of every bit of water to go. I mean, the end result of all the water going down ends up being in there. And I take exception to the fact that it's not in a flood area, because I've been back there and have numerous pictures myself of how far the water comes up. I purchased a house at 106 Brancaster and was told it was not in a flood area. It's since been, the back of my property has been redesignated as part of a floodplain there. I'm 2 houses over and about 40 feet higher than this lot. So if I have water in the back of my lot, I know they have water in the back of their lot. It is the low point of the area. It's downhill. It catches the runoff from all the homes. that are around it. When it rains hard, the water flows down Brancaster like a river. And it is the lowest point of all the properties that drain into this lot, which is basically a swamp. According to the previous owner who sold us our house, the sale of the lot and building upon it have failed numerous times in the past because it's clearly swampy and underwater during the spring and late fall. If you go there now, it's beautiful. If you come back later in the fall or at the beginning of the spring, it's underwater and actually has flowing water behind it. And I have pictures of that if prospective buyers want to see it. Destroying the trees that are on this lot, which hold the runoff from the entire uphill area around it, will result in flooding to the prospective residents' property itself, as well as massive soil loss into the Chisel Run area behind it. This is one of those lots never to be built on. I'd hate to see our new potential neighbors have an expensive and unsatisfactory mistake building in this swampy area. It's called a floodplain for a reason. Having moved there 8 years ago, I was not aware of the rainy seasons, and I wish we would have known how much the water comes up on that. You heard how much of the piece of property was designated as a floodplain. I can only imagine how unsatisfying this endeavor will be for our new neighbors. I know a lot of people in Ford's Colony who have built on similar things without any kind of the type of low point in the street that this is, and they're unsatisfied because they have springs coming up, water impingement and everything on their properties. So I'm just trying to save our future potential neighbors from having the same type of problems here. There's a lot between them and my lot. They've been trying to build on for 2 years. They're still going through all kinds of problems. And their lot sits above this lot at 109 Brancaster. And they still have not cleared it. It's been 2 years since they've been trying to do this. So I just want to ask that this be denied. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Deshane. I'm going to ask staff, can you point out Mr. Deshane's lot for the purposes so we can put some context? Have a view that shows it.
You had one that showed it.
Go back a slide, Mike. I believe, yeah, that house right there.
Yes.
Okay.
That's me, on the right. And there's a lot in between, they're trying to build on it now. And then the lot to the left of it is the one that you're talking about. So it's even lower than the lot they're trying to build on.
Thank you. I just wanted some context. Yep, you may.
Back to our site plan, sorry. One thing I'd like to point out to the members of the board, there's an existing concrete swale. So he is correct that the water comes around here, goes into this swale. There'll be a pipe underneath our driveway. This swale coming from this side turns here, goes along the property line. So some of our water will utilize that existing channel that's been there for stormwater to be able to direct that water away from our house, as well as to be able to handle some of our water. So I would just like to point that out. Again, not exactly an RPA issue, but helpful to understand where some of our runoff is going to go from our lot.
Within the context of the flood zone, and perhaps, Robin, we could move to the floodplain map here.
It's on here. The flood zone is this line, right? It basically is it like a triple dot, Robin, with a dash? So this line that is dash, triple dots, dash, it comes right along basically the wetlands. And so as discussed, this is the 32 contour. Right now we only have even contours on here, otherwise it's a contour city. That runs basically along the 33, which is the flood zone elevation. When the lot was originally platted, the 100-year flood elevation was way in the back. Obviously, things have changed since that was done, but so that's where it currently is. Again, our finished floor will be, yes, there'll be water, relatively close behind our house, but our finished floor will be well above, well out of the concerns of that.
And the presumption that there would be water in that building envelope is going to be from runoff, not so much from the water down by the
Yeah, I mean,
flowing up.
yeah, I mean, there could, there's always the chance when you dig a basement that you run into, groundwater, but you can install a French drain to handle that. I don't believe that, yes, the surface runoff is going to be a concern of our lot, because basically this is going to be a ridge across the front here that's going to direct the water into this channel. And then we'll be handling, kind of the little bit that comes off our roof in the ground through a swale this way. That'll sheet flow, out a majority of this way. We wanted to make that as sheet flow as possible, just because obviously we don't want a channel that whips around here and goes all the way down. So trying to keep really the only swale on our property is out front here to get it away from the front of the house. The rest of it is, sheet flow into this concrete ditch and out into these woods prior to the resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to address the board on this matter? Hearing none, the matter is before the board for discussion.
Mr. Chair, when first looking at this, I was maybe wanting to see some additional mitigation measures, since there's a lot of water coming down that street out into the wetland area as far as the water flow path. But they do have concrete swale and things like there that are directing the water around the house to an existing drainage system. And the home is built as close to the building setback as they can get it. They can't push it any further forward out of the RPA. It's always going to be in the RPA. But I think I would the square footage of the house is right there at the minimum on that street. It's a little 6% over. But I think I would be inclined to support this application.
Other thoughts or comments from the board?
I don't have much to add to that.
Waltrip?
I think they've done as much as they can do to move that water down the side. That house is floodplain, and I personally would not. Yeah, I'm looking at it, I would not.
I can appreciate the comments from members of the board. I'm stuck on this one a little bit just because of the amount of encroachment as close to the wetlands as they are. I realize that they are the minimum for the purposes of the square footage. I am concerned with the water flow in general, whether it's the floodplain coming up as close as it does to the house or sheet flow that may further erode and cause sediment deposition in the resource. So I do have concerns for this. I'm not sure I can support the motion. So if there is one to approve.
Do you think it's, do you think mitigation is a possibility here beyond what's already proposed? Or
Beyond the vegetative plantings.
see anything?
I think the applicant's agent has explained why they haven't proposed that. I'm not going to dispute their judgment there. I am concerned with the volume of water that flows through this area, even though some of it may be channeled with the existing conveyance, and the potential for future impacts associated with that. So that said, I will open the matter back to see if there's anybody else that would care to comment on this matter before closing the public hearing. We'll close the hearing. The matter is before the board.
Mr. Chair, I too share a lot of the concerns that you just articulated. I think at this point, I would be inclined to make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA-23-0098 at 109 Brancaster.
Mr. Wilson.
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA-23-0085 at 4816 Hickory Signpost. Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, Watershed Planner, here to present CBPA-23-0085. Mr. Chase Grogg of Landtech Resources, Inc. has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. and Ms. Sony McConnell for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling located at 4816 Hickory Signpost Road within the Mill Creek watershed. This parcel can be seen above, outlined here in blue. Again, this is within the Mill Creek watershed. And this parcel was platted in 1970 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Total lot size of this property is 0.56 acres, of which 100% is located within the RPA. This parcel can be seen above, again, a little bit closer here in blue. This is Hickory Signpost Road that abuts this property. The topography and existing conditions of this site, there is a small flat area adjacent to Hickory Signpost Road, of which the subject parcel is proposed at, and it slopes off fairly quickly into a floodplain wetland system with a stream running through the middle. The RPA as it affects this property, again, that is within 100% within the RPA. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 134 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 948 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA. This house is approximately 420 square feet. And I did want to point out that there has been a change. This deck on the back here is now proposed to the side here. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the previous site plan, so I'm glad to see that. This is the previous site plan submitted for this case. A change has been made to increase or to decrease the amount of impacts towards those wetlands. They have moved these stairs over to the side. In total, while it does not decrease the impervious area on this site, it does decrease the disturbance on the site by 60 square feet. Total impacts to the RPA, again, equate to 1,822 square feet of impacts associated with everything here. That includes the driveway and the proposed house. In May of 2022, the applicants gained approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals to move the building setback from 60 feet to 30 feet in an effort to move the proposed dwelling further from the wetlands. This property appeared before the Chesapeake Bay Board in June of 2022 for the approval of a 548 square foot single family dwelling. And I'm going to move one slide ahead to just kind of give you guys the history of this exception request. So again, the original approval request included a 548 square foot single family dwelling with a 140 square foot deck, a 109 square foot patio, and a 942 square foot driveway. Exception request CBPA 22-0060 was denied during this meeting. A new application, case number CBPA-22-0082, was then brought before the Chesapeake Bay Board in July of 2022 for the approval of a 550 square foot single family dwelling with a 135 square foot patio, a 20 square foot balcony, and a 555 square foot driveway. Again, that application was also denied. The current proposal was brought before the board at its August 9th, 2022 2023 meeting and was deferred to this evening's meeting. The applicants are now proposing a 420 square foot single-family dwelling with an 88 square foot balcony and a 566 square foot driveway. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 3 planting units, which is 3 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 9 shrubs. Additionally, the applicants have proposed a bioretention best management practice on the property, which will treat water from all the proposed impervious cover in this project. Staff is requesting that an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse due to the environmental sensitivity of this lot. The current proposal is a 657 square foot reduction from the June 2022 submittal, which was this first submittal here. In addition to that, another change that was made in this rendition from the August meeting to tonight's meeting was the ponding depth of this BMP. I'll let the applicant speak more to that, but that was another change. This is an architectural rendering of this house. It hasn't been updated to show that how the stairs being relocated, though it is still applicable to the remainder of the house. Some site photographs. This orange stake here indicates the corner of the front home. Kind of looking back towards the resource and where the BMP may be located. Through this brush here would be the approximate location of the home. Standing at the corner of the house, this is an orange flag here as well. So this is standing kind of at the front corner of the house looking back towards the wetlands. The wetlands begin approximately in the location where this green vegetation is beyond this slope, which you can kind of see here. From the road looking in, this is the approximate location of the driveway. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a single-family dwelling. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a single-family dwelling extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception requests the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied by Chapter 23 to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are either self-created or self-imposed, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be moderate for the proposed development. If the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicants must submit a mitigation plan equating to 3 planting units. Again, that would be 3 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 9 shrubs, and the bioretention BMP facility to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to the project's start. The applicants must submit a surety of $3,000 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. That this exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by September 13th, 2024, and that written requests for an extension to an exception must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 2nd, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Questions for staff?
The only change between what we saw last month and this month is moving the deck.
Moving the deck, and there is a difference in the BMP's ponding depth. It has expanded in depth, but I'll let the contractor explain more on that matter.
Any other questions for staff? Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I will open the public hearing with the applicant, Mr. Grog.
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources again. So after last month's meeting, the first phone call I did was over to the zoning department to talk with John Rogerson to see if there would be any opportunity for us to try and get another BZA variance to move this further away. After a few days of him looking into that, the result of that conversation was that there was no other opportunity for us to be able to pull this house any closer to the street due to the variance that we had received our first go around. As staff mentioned, we did take these stairs, and I know in the past there's been some concern about the how close to these wetlands we were, so we rotated these stairs off of that to be able to keep our clearing closer to the top of bank. Those clearing limits pretty much stayed all the way the same here, and then they bowed out a little bit here. So though we had a bigger reduction than 60 square feet over here, we lost some in this area and making room for the BMP. The BMP in the last cases has a ponding depth of 1/2 foot. We revised it now to pond 1 foot of water prior to spilling over the top. That makes that BMP over double the size in multiple different ways now than what our calculations show, both based on the VRRM calculations as well as quantity calculations on how big that BMP needs to be for this size site, as well as in kind of making that change. This BMP is going to have more of the effect of kind of like a bathtub overflowing on 2/3 of the sides. So by changing that depth of the BMP, the berm, the vegetated berm around it is going to start basically right here on the right side and kind of come all the way around. So if it does during a big rainstorm reach that 1 foot capacity, that water isn't going to be channelized into just one area. Some of it will go into the roadside ditch. Some of it will go across the back or down this side, and the rest will go across the back. I know as well in the last meeting there were some questions on exactly how many trees were going to be removed as part of this project. We went out there and located the trees. Within the limits of disturbance, there are 4 trees that are going to come out. The one that Ms. Bowie had asked us about was the beech one. Do we have those pictures? I'm going to talk about the beech one first just because it doesn't, you can't really tell much in the photo, but it's already lost a big limb and is showing a lot of signs of rot at the bottom. Then the other tree that we're proposing to remove, either one's, I guess that's the beech tree. Again, you can't see, you can see here the limb is has come off a decent limb down towards the bottom, and then in poking a lot of these lower limbs, a lot of this has already shown signs of rot. And then go ahead, Mike, sorry. Then the other tree, so just for kind of point of reference, this is the beech tree in my previous photo. And then the other tree that will go back to the site plan I can show you there is this long leaning oak. Oops. So, beech trees here. There's 3 other smaller trees up here, or sorry, 1, 2, and 3. Then the leaning tree is here, coming out leaning on, I believe, this 12-inch tree. So those are the trees that are all coming out. That pretty much, every time we've gone back, we've tried to squeeze more and more out of this and make it as small an impact as possible. I honestly think that this is the least that could possibly be done for this lot that's been around since the 70s. Just trying to make a low impact site. I think increasing the capacity of that BMP helps with the initial flush of water, helps contain it, slow it down, let a majority of that during a majority of rains is going to infiltrate in through the soil media there. And then again, during even a good rain, has plenty of ponding space and then can sheet flow around, so there's not just concentrated flow. Again, kind of running our limits of disturbance along this top of bank. All of this drainage is being shifted this way, catching all of our roof runoff, and then with a swale in front of the house to make that our main point of treatment. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Grog?
one tree in the back is leaning, looks like that's getting ready to come down anyway.
Yes, it's basically on the slope back there, so I would love to be able to get it before it falls, because if it were to fall, it's gonna take a massive root ball out of the side of the slope there. So it would be, but yes, I believe both the beech and that tree have, you know, a good storm in front of them and they wouldn't be there, but again, just my opinion.
Only removing a minimum of 2 other trees, basically.
It's 4 trees, it's a total of 5 trees, 4 within our limits of disturbance, and then the 5th, that's the leaner. That's just we were out there walking the lot again, trying to see what we could accomplish, and just realizing that if this,
That water that comes down the road into that BMP, does that catch the road?
No, so the road would be the road is a separate ditch.
It's a separate
Basically, the road ditch comes down here, and then there is a point right in this area where it fizzles and it's kind of cut its own path this way. And then I think during a decent rainstorm, it continues down and pretty much gets to the bridge down here and then just goes down into the creek. So basically, we would be, our site's a little bit higher than the edge of road here, so we would just be extending, that berm down. So there would be a roadside ditch,
So
and then our
within enlarging
BMP.
the BMP, you're basically handling the lot itself with the
All
BMP.
of the water that falls within our limits of disturbance is going to that BMP, both non-impervious and impervious.
So even if you were to have gotten authorization to move the building or the home closer to the road, you'd still be in the seaward. So this essentially, everything done here is in the seaward.
Correct. Everything is in the seaward. I mean,
the 50 foot.
again, in trying to just, everything's on the board with this project, so it was just trying to see if there was a path forward by, giving them a call.
House built on stilts,
That's correct. So another place, I know you were not here at the last meeting, Mr. Walter, but in discussions at the last meeting and trying to reduce impervious on the lot and kind of have some of the features, the house is placed up on stilts so that there's still a parking space underneath. So basically this drive just serves as a place to be able to come off the road, pull underneath, maybe another car could park here, be able to back out, and then be able to, be front on leaving this road.
that's the first one I've seen in this area built like that.
Again, another way to try and squeeze as many, it was Mr. Hopke's creative idea on trying to get as much bang for our buck on this one.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Grog.
Miss Marcano would like to speak, the owner.
Yep, happy to.
Hello, board members. My name is Sonny Marcano. I reside at 817 23rd Street in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'd just like to simply say, I'm just asking the board to see our vision of, I'm hoping to be granted the opportunity to build just a small dwelling on the land in which my family has owned for over 60 years. And I think we deserve to be able to pass this down to our next generation. And I thank you.
Would anybody else care to address the board?
Yeah. Good evening. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Rutherford Bowling. I live at 4676 Hickory Signpost Road. I'm representing my family at 4690 Hickory Signpost Road that own the swamp adjacent to this property. As I've said before, this swamp is very fragile. I'm reading about the runoff from the whatever you want to call that, water retention.
EMP?
Yes, if you've been down there the last couple of days with all the rain, that bank is just washing away, and you disturb it anymore. I see a lot of problems with our erosion through there, plus on the other side of the going into the swamp. As I've said, the Mill Creek watershed areas through there.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you mentioned additional erosion as a result of flow. Is that the roadside drainage that's flowing across their lot that's causing that erosion?
The water is coming from above the property, rushing down the ditch, and it's washing that clay bank out all the time. On the other side of the road, we also have a pump station. So there's a lot of water rushing down into the swamp area there. And it can be very messy at times when we have a lot of the rain.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. Also, you know, I've asked several times, and I've been in this meeting about a well. They're gonna need a well on that property, and I don't see anywhere where they're gonna be able to put it. You've gotta have it so many feet from the, this pump station, and from the house next to it, and then the swamp. And then you're pulling these trees out. I have several old beech trees in my yard too, and they, you know, they look dead, but they're thriving. And I have had some come down, and they leave a big hole in the ground when they come out. I asked, since you are supposed to protect our wetlands, to really give us some consideration, because this swamp is very fragile, and so many people love it. And I'm doing my best to keep my side of it clean. There's lots of surrounding neighborhoods that have been in the area before this committee was established, and I'm worried that they're gonna say, well, you let them do it, why can't I? And I try to abide by the rules, because I'm right up against it. In my area, my children have homes there, and I just hate to see that that corner. It's just gonna be, it's gonna be a mess. And please give it some consideration that to leave nature alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowling. Would anybody else care to address the board? Mr. Bowling.
Good evening, Board. My name is Gary Bowling. I also live at 4676 Hickory Signpost Road, the property that backs up the center of the swamp with this. I have approximately 20 years experience in civil engineering with AES and about 18 years in architecture with Guernsey Tingle Architects. While I applaud the designers for innovative thinking and trying to come up with a way to do this, I still am opposed to this project for the following reasons. The house, the driveway, and everything to do with it are still completely 100% within the 50-foot seaward side of the RPA. And I would never imagine the board, in my years of experience, to approve such a project. And secondly, this is an unbuildable lot. It was created before the subdivision ordinance existed. It was created back in a time when it would, you lay the lots out, and if you had a lot like this, it was just a simple matter of you just fill the swamp and build a house. Before these regulations existed. And this would never be able to be platted today, a lot like this. I walked the site today and saw the new stakes for the land limits of disturbance. I counted about 9 mature trees that would need to come out. 3 of them were where the BMP is planned to be situated. And it was always my understanding that in the RPA, you cannot take a tree out unless you're putting a house there, but you cannot take a tree out unless it's dead or dying, and it has to be verified by a tree arborist. And some of these trees are right up to the edge of the wetlands. The staked limits of disturbance were right behind the wetland flags, and it didn't appear as it was on that plat. Our cypress swamp is an important and a delicate feature to the water quality, and I think this would have a negative impact on the water quality and the swamp, because as you all know, silt fences fail. BMPs can fail after a heavy rainstorm, and the maintenance of those is required. And where this BMP is probably within feet of the road. And a heavy rain we've seen wash through there and wash those ditches out completely. So that rain, all that water that's captured in that BMP is going to end up on the pavement. And as my wife pointed out, the well location, I've not seen anything that shows where that is. And I know that that's probably not a concern of this board, but it is required to be 50 feet from the house, from an adjacent well, and 100 feet from a sewage station, which is right across the street. And my last point is, and again, this may not be an issue of the Wetlands Board or the, but in zone R1, the maximum height for residences is 35 feet and 2 stories. By jacking this house up on stilts, you've created a 3-story house that has to be higher than 35 feet. That's in accordance with section 24-240 of the code of the zoning ordinance. It is my hope that this board will do the right thing, protect our wetlands and the water quality by denying this exception request. If approved, I fear that you will be setting a dangerous precedence for future cases similar to this. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Bowling? Thank you. Would anybody else care to address this matter?
Hello.
So, name and address, please.
My name is Babs Bankson. I live at 4824 Hickory Signpost Road. Thank you for hearing me yet again. Basically, what we're talking about is swampland, and it is 100% within the seaward area of the protection zone. So I'm really surprised that the staff originally approved this to go forward. I'm rather baffled by that. This board itself has deemed the land on 2 different occasions as unbuildable. So again, I'm not sure why we keep coming back to this issue. The amount of gyrations that they've had to do in order to try and shoe fit a building onto this very fragile, very small property just doesn't make any sense to me. Unless you think about, she's basically, the property owner is stuck with swampland that is unbuildable, therefore it's unsellable. And at the last board meeting, we heard that she has to pay property taxes on this. So I just want to be very clear that I am not against the property owner. I have never been, and I submitted to Trevor before the meeting a copy of a letter that I wrote on January 27th, 2022 to Ruth Larson, the Berkeley District Supervisor. I want to make it very clear that I outlined all of the issues of the board, the zoning board, and then the 2 hearings that we had last year in 2022 about this wetlands. I outlined what the designation was. I outlined that I recognize that the property owner has rights, and I also outlined that we need to preserve this particular property as wetlands. I submitted the pictures with the letter, and I also sent it to Mr. McGlennon, who was the chair of the Board of Supervisors at the time, and I also submitted a verification just showing I didn't just write this letter and put it backdated. I actually did send it to different board members of the Board of Supervisors. I mention this because I am hoping that this board puts its weight behind making things right with the property owner. It's not right for her to be stuck with a property that is unbuildable and unsellable, and I get that. And I would be fighting too if I was in that situation. But we're talking about very fragile wetlands, and I'm asking for the board to use its authority, its influence, its weight, whatever you can do to get the Board of Supervisors to make it right with this property owner so that this wetlands can be preserved, but she's been made whole. That's what I'm asking the board to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else care to address the board? Oh, yeah. Yeah, come on. We welcome all. Even little girls.
My name's Mac Whitehead at 4638 Hickory Signpost Road, and I was here last time as well. And no offense to the owner at all. I guess it's a good thing the house is going to be on stilts, because I've seen that lot go underwater at least 3 times, and just the bridge wash out during Floyd. The lot has been underwater during hurricanes, nor'easters, and decent thunderstorms. It's a horrible spot for a house. I do not see how you can build a house there. But also, I got a letter, I believe it was back in 2005, from the Chesapeake Bay Board, that I was unable to do anything for about the first 100 foot or 150 foot of my property. Not cut a tree down, not make any major landscape changes. And this house is going to be about 25 feet from the creek. So that's a little hypocritical there. So just, it's a horrible idea, and I'm totally against it. And like I said, that BMP is going to overflow. It's all going to go on the road, and it's just going to be a big mess. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm going home. Let's go.
Would anybody else care to address the board? Hi, good evening.
I am Bishop. I live at 4847 Hickory Signpost Road. About a third of my property is wetlands on the other side. My family has taken good care of it. I too have received letters about not disturbing it, not even touching a tree or trimming a tree. So I am concerned because the lot is very small. The location is right next to a one-lane bridge. Traffic is horrific there. Many close calls. That house will block views for anyone to see on the other side. And like other people have said, the water does run down fast and it overruns the ditches.
Any questions from the board for the members of the audience that have spoken? I know we've lost one, but just in case I didn't ask the board if they had any questions, I apologize. Anybody else care to address the board?
I would just like to address some of the things that were brought up by neighbors, which I appreciate them coming by. First, as I know you are aware, the previous 2 denials are not a decision by the board declaring the lot unbuildable. It's just a denial of a proposed project. In our meeting, once we did switch to the house plan that we do have, John Hopke and I did have a meeting with Christy Parrish, sent her a copy of the house plans. We are below 35 feet and we meet all of the zoning requirements for this lot. So that house that we're trying to get approval for is not an issue for this lot. Wells can be as close as to 25 feet next to houses. The main concern with the 50 feet is the termite treatment you use on a well. If you switch to a different type of termite treatment, they can be as close as 25 feet, which we've done on many homes in Chickahominy Haven where lots are extremely small and tight. So we're aware of the well issue. The final comment I actually have is for staff. I would like staff to comment on the removal of trees for projects that are 100% in the RPA, and that I guess the overall that while yes, if you have 10 acres and you have 1 acre in the RPA, you can't go remove a tree, or if you were designing a site plan, you can't remove a tree, necessarily, you could do it for an outfall, but not for a BMP. A statement was just made about tree removal, and so if you feel so inclined to comment on that, I would like you to comment on that.
Perhaps, Mr. Wilson, the context for the notice that was provided to the neighbors might shed some light on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For those that don't know me, I'm Mike Wilson, Section Chief for Stormwater Resource Protection. The notice that several of the public comments referenced did go out in 2005, 2007 timeframe. It was a notice to those property owners that were affected by the 2003 ordinance change, which redefined what an RPA was based on stream perenniality. That notice, while I wrote it and the environmental division director at the time signed it, I don't remember exactly what it said. But it did notify people that they did have RPA on their property. It is now was considered a protected piece of property, and but the property owner still had certain rights. Yes, it is a true statement that we will allow dead, dying, diseased trees to be removed from the RPA, and we would not, on a routine basis, allow healthy trees to be removed. That being said, on a site development plan such as this, we consider a single-family house a site development plan. There are what we call limits of clearing, and it is understood that trees within that envelope of the clearing, whether they're healthy or dead, are allowed to be removed by ordinance. I believe that's what Mr. Grog was getting at, and
And I think the distinction, and if I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but if one of the neighbors desired to remove trees, they're not necessarily denied if they came to staff and had a reason to do so and went forward either with an administrative or official process.
Correct. There's an administrative process for tree removal within the RPA. We do take each of them based on their own merits and the reason for those requests. Some are the tree's a threat to my home. It's was damaged in a lightning strike. We want to open up a view to a pond or water body, and some of them. We have denied in the past where they were just, the person wanted a view shed and they wanted to clear the entire RPA buffer, and that would not be allowed.
Very good, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Say the house is built. Down the road, we have a storm and water and everything, and it flows into the swamp, and it contaminates my side of the swamp, where it makes it into a unusable area. It kills all the wildlife and everything, the greenery. What recourse do I have? Do my taxes go down?
Answer to that.
Am I allowed to build? I'm just trying down the road to hopefully keep that from happening, and to preserve this one little piece of property. I mean, I'll buy it from her if she, if it's that bad. I pay my taxes. They're not that much, but I don't. Every day I have. We call him, this man the puppy man. He cleans the road for us. He picks up trash, and he always comments how beautiful it is down there. And I know y'all have ridden down there and checked it out. I mean, it's more visual when you see it up close. Then these don't do it justice, these pictures. So, but I'm just thinking about the future, and I hope you guys do too, and look after us.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
Thank you for your comments. Would anybody else from the audience care to address the board? Nope, that's what we're here for.
I'm Sonny Marcano. I reside at 817 23rd Street in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I would just like to say, before the act became in effect, you could basically go in and just fill the land. But I think with this perspective, it's being done in a way that it's preserving it. And I think I do have the right, and my family has the right, to build on the property that we've owned for over 60 years. We did it in 2005 with Miss Babs. I did the same for that home. We built, and it was approved, and it was in the wetlands as well too. So I think we deserve the right to build as well, and we're trying to preserve it. And I think Chase has really described and detailed, I think, the utmost for this property. And I mean, this is what nature has given to us, and we are trying to protect it. And I'm just asking to be able to continue our future as well too. just like they do enjoy and embrace Hickory Signpost Road as well. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll ask one more time. Any questions or comments with regard to the comments that have been made to the board? The matter is before the board for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned in the last month's meeting, I was inclined to support this. I see both sides. I certainly understand the property owners in the adjacent areas and their concerns about protecting that area. I also see that the applicant has done an incredible job at trying to mitigate the concerns that the board has had over the months that we've looked at this. I mean, the actual property size is, they've done a lot. They've raised the structure. They put the on-site BMP in there. They've done a lot of mitigating to try to make this work. And although I see both sides, this is a very challenging application, certainly, but I'm still inclined to support the application as presented.
I will comment as well. While I also appreciate the work that's been done on behalf of the applicant to raise the structure and try to minimize the footprint and accommodate all reasonable mitigation measures to try to reduce impacts, I still do have questions about whether or not the proposal is within harmony of Section 23 of the code and will not represent a future detriment to water quality as a result. So I do maintain my concern that I've expressed previously. Anybody else care to comment? I'd appreciate any feedback.
I believe that the engineers have done the best they can do. There's a lot. I have concern that the property do have a certain amount of rights to do with their property that they've paid taxes on for all these years. I've got concern with the neighbors too. I think as much as you can do for this property to make it work. I don't see with raising the house at the height of what it is, not building it right on the ground and have to worry about flooding inside the house. I personally
Mr. O'Brien, any comments that you'd care to make?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. This was, the request to defer it from last month has given us all an opportunity, not only for the applicant to revisit the proposal, but for us to kind of think about it ourselves. And I, for one, have thought about it and appreciate the efforts made to kind of one up a little bit more what was proposed last time by moving the deck, out of an area that you can minimize taking down the trees and such, as well as increasing the depth of the BMP. So in some sense, it's a little bit better of a proposal than last time. But, what really is the question here for me is, whether you can say that, is this lot really buildable or not? And because of the amount of wetlands that are impacted here and the fact that everything that's being done here is in the seaward portion of the 50-foot RPA. So, even though the minimum is being proposed, it still doesn't address the spirit of this question about allowing construction in what is primarily a wetlands riparian area. So I'm really on the fence here with this one, between minimum necessary and as you spoke, Chuck, whether this is in harmony with what we should be allowing for exceptions in the RPA. So really torn on this one.
Appreciate the board's comments. Are there any other comments from anybody in the audience? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board for any additional discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board Case Number CBPA-23-0085 at 4816 Hickory Signpost Road.
Mr. Wilson.
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
No.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Mr. Roadley.
No.
Motion fails 2-2.
That concludes our public hearings. Board considerations, Mr. Wilson?
Not really a board consideration, but I do have two matters for the board. Tonight, although he could not make it, was Mr. Dunn's last meeting on the board. He has requested not to be reappointed. We appreciate his service. We'll do a little, when we can get him back in person, we'll do a little something more formal for him. And also, I want to let the audience know and the board know that tonight is also Mr. Trevor Long's last meeting with us. He has decided to enjoy other pursuits at another place of employment. And I do want to thank Mr. Long for his 6 years of service to the county. And we will be doing if we can get him back as well, we'll be doing a little more formal presentation for him as well.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Long for his support of the board. Very good. Any matters of special privilege? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. We are adjourned.